I'm here today with Amy Newmark, editor-in-chief and publisher of Chicken Soup for the Soul. Do you have the books in front of you? Can you
I
share?
do. So, of
Okay.
course, I happen to have them right in front of me. Whoops. I have to do this backwards thing. So here they are. They're just like a passion project for me. I've been working on these books for 2 or 3 years, and I wanted to create a new, smaller format. See, these are little, whoops, little. They're a few dollars less than our normal books. They're not as daunting. They're not quite as thick. And inside there are graphics that are kind of like the insides of magazines, with pull quotes and then like fun little things that make them feel more like a magazine experience, because I'm realistic. We're competing for the eyeballs of these kids with social media, YouTube, and everything else. And so I wanted these books to impart all the values and advice that parents and grandparents want the kids to have, but in a very easy to consume manner so that the kids will actually pick up the books and read them.
Well, so I'm going to tell you from my perspective, and I'm clearly not your target audience as a teenager or a preteen, but I enjoyed reading the stories so much, and they're profoundly touching. Like you are accomplishing exactly what you set out to do. And one of the things that we hear often from parents is, are there any resources out there for the kids? So there's so much written out there to help parents, but much less that really can change the life of a kid who's struggling. So I'm wondering, I want to start with this first. Have you gotten any feedback from readers about how it might have impacted them, how any of these stories in these two books?
Yes, they tell us that this is like their secret weapon. They give these books to the kids or the grandkids, and then the kids read the stories, and they they believe the lesson when it comes from a peer. When a kid says, look, this is what happened to me in 8th grade, and this is what I learned from it, your child will pick that up and take it in. But if you say it, forget it. It doesn't matter. So this is the way that we can pass on these stories to kids and have them actually believe the source and actually react to them positively. And I actually have found that even as an adult, the stories are really helpful, because these are the kinds of life lessons that we all need to hear once in a while. These lessons about being true to your beliefs, standing up for what you think is right, even if it's embarrassing. These are all things that we have to do as adults as well. And so I feel like I've been changed through these stories, even though the stories are ostensibly for kids to be changed.
Yeah, no, I did. I was touched over and over again by the stories. We're gonna talk about a few of them, but one of your writers and contributors is here, Dina Sievert Haynes. Proud to have my story published in Think Positive for Teens, and it is in fact a great resource for teens. So if you are on here right now and you're looking for that, leave the door open. That's her story. And every single one of the stories that have been chosen for these books they touch you somewhere deep within. And so I think that it's really a gift for our children. And do you hear that parents are reading them with their kids so that it gives them an opportunity to talk about it?
Yeah, it depends on the parents' relationship with the kids. So in some cases, the parents just have to give the book to the kids and hope they'll read it, and they're not allowed to discuss it, especially with boys, because teenage boys, sometimes they'll just grunt at you. And I remember when my husband used to take his son to hockey games, he'd be like, it was a great day. He grunted 3 times. Girls are more likely to have the discussion. And then there are the families where they actually read the stories together and discuss them around the dinner table, which is so fabulous. And I have a feeling that when that happens, the parents are benefiting just as much as the children, because who wouldn't benefit from stories about finding true friends, and really finding the value in friends and not just going with the popular people. These are stories we all need to hear.
Yeah, and also it lets us know, because sometimes I think as a parent we forget what it was like to be that age, and so it feels like our kid is the only one struggling with some of these issues. So for example, one of the stories, I think it's the first story in the preteen book, is about a girl who is just longingly looking at the popular table in the lunchroom. And so Amy, tell us a little bit about that story.
I love that story. So Victoria Fedden would see the girls at the popular table and wonder what would it be like to sit with them. And then one day she walked by the popular table And they started insulting her for her clothes or something about her. And then so she went over to her regular table and then just spontaneously invited this boy who was sitting alone to come and sit with them. And he turned out to be great. And then they started inviting every kid who was basically insulted by the girls at the popular table. Their table in the cafeteria turned into the happiest table in the cafeteria. And then finally, a couple of the girls who had been at the popular table, who had been, I don't know, shunned by the other members of the popular table, they slunk over to the new table, Victoria's table, and she realized this is the true popular table in the cafeteria because we're nice to people and we're friendly, and this is where people can be happy. And I thought that was such a great message because we've all been through that. Everybody had experience with the popular table. And the funny thing is, even the girls at the popular table will tell you later, oh, I was unhappy. I was insecure. I was always worried about everything. You know, even those girls aren't really happy.
And the power that Victoria has in that moment when she decides to be the leader in this, forming this new, happy, kind place. Like it had two parts to it that I was so touched by.
Yeah, I mean, there's something so empowering about doing the right thing and standing up for what you believe and making true friends. Like there was this girl, Alexis Streb, and she stood up for what she believed in. And her story, I just keep talking about her story because I was one of those loudmouths who would, you know, speak up for what she believed in and then get in trouble with the teacher. But Alexis has a little brother on the autism spectrum, and she was at band practice one day, and the band teacher said, "Guys, you're playing like the kids on the short bus," which was so insulting because the short bus was for the special needs kids. And Alexis was shocked and she raised her hand and she said, "You can't make fun of the kids on the short bus. They're just like the rest of us." And the teacher was really embarrassed and apologized. And Alexis was just sitting there, you know, embarrassed. She was a new kid at that school. But then she realized, you know what? No one else spoke up except me. And I did the right thing. And she could feel proud of herself and feel like she was true to herself. And I thought, what a great lesson for kids and really to the parents too.
I felt like when she was trying to decide whether she should say something or not, because she had encountered other experiences where she'd been silent and felt really terrible about it. And in that moment, she actually did it with an adult, which was even braver. So you're like rooting for her. It's just so empowering that moment when she takes charge. And so those are a lot of the stories. One more that I loved was like this girl becomes friends with another girl who I think has a very big house, right? Learning to love my messy life. And this girl has a very big, fat, loud, messy family and with a lot of kids.
Yeah, so that's part of our whole focus on gratitude and counting your blessings and valuing what you have instead of looking at what other people have, and also treasuring your own family. And so this girl who lived in this big empty house had a nanny and a housekeeper and parents who were never home. And she was actually very lonely, even though she was surrounded by opulence. And when she went to her friend's house, and her friend's house was crowded and there were too many kids and not enough rooms and it was noisy, well, the girl from the fancy house was so much happier in the messy, crowded house. And that taught her friend that she should really value her messy, noisy family because that was where the real joy was.
Okay, the last story I want to talk about because I just love what this mom did. So it's a story about a girl whose very close friend loses his father and how the mom handles that situation.
Yeah, and this is a great lesson for mothers too, to help your kids learn some of the etiquette and some of the ways that you act more adult. So this girl was only in ninth grade, and when her classmate's father died, a father she had never met, she didn't think it would be appropriate to go to the funeral. And her mother explained to her, no, the funeral is for the living. You go to show that you care for your friend. And so being a ninth grader, she was terrified, but she went, she clung to her mother, was right by her side. And they didn't bring flowers, they didn't bring food, they didn't do anything except be there. And her friend appreciated so much that she showed up, and her mother did the right thing by forcing her to go. And that life lesson stuck with this girl. And she learned to always reach out to somebody when there's a death or an illness or something where you're not sure which way to go. Should I leave them alone or should I lean in? She learned that leaning in is always the right thing to do. So, what a great lesson that her mother forced her to do. And it was probably tough for the mother to do it, but she did it and she changed her daughter for life.
So, what prompted you to do these two positive thinking books right now?
Well, the reason I did them was we've done great with our books about positive thinking that are for adults. And we also did a book for younger kids called Think Positive for Kids. And that one did really well. And I thought, why am I not doing this for preteens and teens? A group that bought, millions and millions of copies of our books over the last, 25 years. And so I really wanted to get the most important values into these books. So that's why we have being true to yourself, picking true friends, doing the right thing even when it's hard, making effort even when it's hard, treasuring your family, counting your blessings. So important for kids, right? So I wanted to encompass all of these positive thinking values into these books. And we had some great stories to choose from. And so I'm just so super excited. And we actually waited 2 years for the right time to put the books out. And I can't think of a better time than during the pandemic when kids are at home, have some downtime to read, and really need a lot of the emotional support that are in these pages.
Yeah, very uplifting for anybody who wants to read it. Parents should absolutely share it with their kids. But now that takes us to the next question, which is there's often situations where the suggestion from the parent is the kiss of death. So, do you have any recommendations for how a parent could get their kid to read the book?
Well, if it's a boy, I'd say leave it in the bathroom, right? That's what I do with husbands, right? I always say to women, leave it in the bathroom for your husband. I think that works with boys as well. I think for a girl, just leave it on the night table, see what happens. I mean, that's what I used to do with my kids. You just kind of stick it there, and then if you don't force them, they'll just pick it up. And the nice thing is the stories are short, 2 or 3 pages. So it's a nice 5 or 10 minute bite of advice, and then they can go back to looking at Instagram, but at least you'll get it in a little bite-sized pieces for them.
So I saw a quote on your Facebook page that I just wanted to share because it's so. I mean, your Facebook page is very inspiring. Also, it is not happiness that makes us grateful; it's gratefulness that makes us happy. And it's such a beautiful quote, and it so aligns with all of the work you're doing. So if you have one, leave us with something inspiring before the holiday season.
All right, I have a favorite quote, and it's what it was. Now I'm trying to remember the exact thing. It's about ships are not made to sit in the harbor; they're made to sail. But I'm not getting it right. But it's really about stepping outside your comfort zone, which is something we talk about in these books also, that you should, try that new sport, try that new food, try that new thing, because that's what keeps life dynamic and interesting. And even kids need to not get stuck in a rut. Even kids need to step outside their comfort zones and try new, safe, parent approved things.
Thank you so much for what you do. Thank you for bringing me into it. I loved reading both books. And everybody, go get it and enjoy it and have a wonderful holiday season.
Thanks so much, Susan.